can keep going. Cool. So I have like a double clicker thing that's going to be going on, so it's going to be kind of awkward. So hopefully you're having an awkward morning too, so that we can do this together. I've been giving this talk for about a year and a half, and as I've been giving this talk, this kind of mantra that I was living in, why would you can't, has kind of transformed my own life as I've gone and I've talked about kind of what I've been through and what this means to me and why this ridiculous sentence organically came out of my mouth. And I'm hoping, I'm actually on like a mini tour right now. I'm calling it my catharsis tour. So I'm giving this talk 3 times this week. And then I'm going to put it away. Because the thing about lessons is that when you learn them and then you live them, you have to get ready for the next one. And not that there haven't been many as this has changed for me, but I'm really excited about not knowing what happens next. And you know, you can't stop time. Time's kind of a bitch that way. So I believe in you. And not like in some creepy guru way, but I believe in you because if I don't believe in you, then how will anyone believe in me? I don't have some kind of like amazing talent. I'm not going to show you a bunch of work that you could find on the internet that's just like, oh my God, this is great. I didn't get like a genius grant. I don't come from money. I don't have other artists or designers or people who work in advertising in my life. I was just lucky enough to have a few people that believed in me enough to like boost me to the next place. So, you know, I live that ethos of just like, I want to believe. So I believe in pretty much everybody and their potential to pretty much do anything. So I was looking at this, but then you didn't see it. So I just wanted to stop and like enjoy this moment together of this slide. So a couple of things that I like to cover off initially are some misuses of the word can't. So things that people have said to me, you can't be an artist and have a career. So how many people here are creatives? Can I see a show of hands? Creative folks? How many of you are artists as well? You know, not all the time is that someone, like you don't always have both. Like some people just like make like web banners, like that's all they do. How many people are technologists that are here? Developers, interactives? Cool, we got a lot of you guys too. Hey, guess what? That's an art. Like creative code is a thing. You're allowed to be an artist too. You're not just shoveling coal into the engine to make the locomotive go. You're allowed to actually play inside your language. Other things that I was told, you can't own a company and have a day job. That one's been a really difficult and weird one to reconcile for me. You can't speak your mind. I think in business we hear that one quite a bit. You can't be yourself. This was one early on in my career that I really struggled with, being that I'm pretty fucking weird and didn't feel like that was an acceptable thing to be in the office. And then, you know, I think what we hear a lot is you can't have it all. You can't have it all. I'm sorry. And that's really bullshit, and I'm going to call bullshit on that one. Like, you can have it all, but you have to define like what all is. So if you want like a mega babe wife and like 6-pack abs and like a ton of money, like you can have that, but you're going to have to make like a lot of sacrifices and crunches and shit like that, and then you'll be able to have those things. You know, for me, like having it all is being healthy and being happy, having enough, laughing a lot, and a certain element of freedom. And these are things that oftentimes we forget that we can control. We can control having it all, but we have to control what we believe all is. And then there are some proper can'ts. And we're going to get into some like weird stuff inside the world of real can'ts as we go through this. So you can't live forever. I know they say that like the person who will live forever has been born. It's the time. Like, no, sorry. Like, that's probably not true. Like, even if you actually would chronologically like live forever, like you're gonna get hit by a drone that's on fire and you're gonna melt your face and die. Like, that's just gonna happen. You really can't understand the chaos of life. Like, I'm sorry, all of you in this room, guys, you're all gonna die. Me too, probably sooner than all of you as well. You can't win them all. You're going to have to lose. Things will get fucked up. Projects will go awry. People will not pay you. You will get fired. These things all happen. You can't please all the people all the time. Not just a great lyric, totally true. So you have to really decide who you want to please and who you can't please. And when you can't please someone, stop trying. And there are some things about the word can't, for me, that created a block that didn't exist. So I started suffering from panic attacks about 10 years ago. And not the kind of like, oh, I'm having a panic attack, I'm gonna go meet him. Like, I suffered from panic attacks like, I'm afraid to leave the house, I'm afraid to go to sleep, I'm afraid to drive my car, I'm gonna stop breathing, my eyelids are gonna fall off. Like the kind of panic attacks where I was out on a date with a man who had never had a panic attack before. And he was like, what is that like? Anxiety, what's that like? He was a volleyball player, which I guess makes you immune to nerves. And I was sitting at this dinner and I was like, it kind of feels like I want to unzip my skin and set my skeleton on fire and then run out of the room just screaming, like just arms in the air, just like screaming on fire skeleton. And he's like, God, that sounds horrible. I was like, it is. It's pretty bad. And suffering from something that is so internal is a really bizarre thing to reconcile with yourself because you truly believe that you can't do those things. And I'm not going to dwell too much on that time. And clearly, like, I'm doing a little bit better. Like, I'm sitting in this chair up here in front of all of you, which is incredibly painful. But I'm not, like, incapacitated on drugs while I'm doing it. Like, I'm just sitting here with my bananas, like, feeling pretty righteous about it. And a lot of that, was me reconciling the demon of time and reconciling the demon of death and of change. And in 2009, I lost my best friend, and I really learned what can't feels like. When you can't call someone, when you can't see them, when you can't tell them the things that you wanted to tell them. And the difference between what I thought I couldn't do, my can'ts, my internal bullshit, and this very real situation created a window for me to see through and see into this beyond of breaking can'ts, which now has been many, many years and is still something that clearly I'm struggling with, which is why I'm up here doing my weird self-therapy. So we're going to go through 3 lessons. The first one is be yourself because you can't be me. So like we're going to talk a bit about me. Like this talk is really just like kind of self-serving in a little bit of a weird way. Thus, this is the catharsis tour. But it's really important that you be you, like the things that you're into. And don't be afraid to talk about it. If you're like really into My Little Ponies and country music, like be into that shit. Be into it like 100,000,000% into it. Because if you pretend that you're like me or you're like, oh, I like what you like that's, people are gonna see right through it and it's not interesting and it's not fun. People who are really passionate about what they're passionate about is really what makes them interesting, no matter what their passion is. I worked with this bizarre flash designer for a while who would listen to country music, and he's like a big burly dude, and he'd be like singing Taylor Swift. And I was like, this is the most obnoxious thing in an open office I've ever experienced. But I absolutely adored him because he was so incredibly into the shit he was into. So, for me, before I went into college, I was a carpenter. And I made furniture and did refinishing, and I thought this was what I was gonna do for like the rest of my life. And I started kind of taking old computers and making recycle art, and that was really kind of my first digital art. And it looked like this. And this was kind of the first things that I ever made with computers, and it was not quite what I do with them now, but they started to get a bit of attention. And as they started to get attention, I realized that advertising was going to move everything around me. That if I wanted to be an artist, I had to learn how to market myself, and I had to learn how to market my skills. I'm sorry, someone use your alarm. Do you need to wake up? Is it time? Take your pills. Take your pills. It's time. So I went to college, which I think is university here, but I don't really understand the difference totally. It's like 2 years versus 4 years versus technical versus non-technical. I don't know. It's all the fucking same to me. So that's, I decided to go to college. And I went for digital media, which I don't think they really serve these like digital media, multimedia degrees anymore because they just make like lunatics that know too much. I did design and programming and video editing and motion graphics and real-time games and military simulation and any number of things. And you know, I wanted to do all of them. I wanted to be a programmer and an editor and an animator. And it was this really incredible experience. And I was just at this buffet, and I was like, I'm going to get just as fat as possible while I'm at this buffet. And then I had my first motion graphics class. And as an artist, everything was very still, was one single moment in time. And on my first day learning motion graphics, I heard a quote that has stayed with me throughout my career. If you want to make Godzilla chase your girlfriend, the hardest thing will be for you to find a girlfriend. And that really stuck with me because you have an ability to control in digital art an additional element of time that you don't really have in any other medium. And it's not just in motion graphics, but in interactive as well. It's these non-linear art forms. And for me, I fell in love. I was like, oh, forget fucking sculpture. Like, forget painting. Like, are you kidding me? I don't need someone to go to a gallery to experience a singular moment. I can create a universe and then have them get inside of it and then be with them on a one-on-one in their mind. And that was the kind of control that I was always looking for. It was this really magical thing. So when I got out of school, like most people, I just started freelancing. I'm going to guess that many of you in this room have dabbled in the dark arts of freelancing. And I wanted to do everything. So, you know, I did programming, and I made logos, and did branding, and websites, and motion graphics. And at this particular time, you know, this is 2003, there weren't a lot of people that were doing motion graphics. So it was a really sweet time to be doing this thing that was really an emerging art form and telling people like, oh, I make lower thirds. I'm going to ruin television for everyone. Like, that was what I said my specialty was. And I did. And I ruined all the TV with that shit on the bottom. And it was amazing. And then I got this really great opportunity while I was freelancing. And, you know, I had sold my car to buy a camera, and I needed to be able to shoot video and edit video if I wanted to do motion graphics. So I got hired to do this off-roading piece. And I flew down to Atlanta, Georgia, and we're waiting for this client that was absolutely a nightmare. They insisted on starring in their own piece, which is all, like, if a client is like, no, I'm going to star in it, like, just run. Like, run from the project, like, as far as possible. Like, they're absolutely not talent, and it's going to be the worst, the absolute worst. So we got to the set at like 7 in the morning, and it was 114 degrees. And I'm sitting out on the set, and the client's nowhere to be found because they were out, like, partying because they were the worst. And at the time, I had these, like, big dreadlocks. So I'm getting hotter and hotter and hotter sitting out there and starting to have, you know, a really exceptional, like, 22-year-old diva fit, basically, in the heat. And my friend who had hired me turns around and goes, listen, bitch, you got to eat sand to shit bricks to build a pyramid. And it put me on my heels because truly, like, who the fuck was I? Like, I was 22 and I sold a car. I sold an 88 Buick to buy a camera. And this piece, you know, wound up being one of the cornerstones of my portfolio. And eventually the client showed up at like 10 or 11 o'clock or something, and we shot it, and it was great. But at the time, you know, I really didn't understand about building a pyramid. And I don't think I have one quite yet, but I'm understanding how you lay those bricks down. And there's a humility there that oftentimes when we start having these great skills, we kind of lose sight of a bit. Which brings us to lesson 2. Only give the fucks you plan to keep. This is a big one. And this is one I think is going to be a lesson for me for all of time. You can't really take back things that you say. So if you're going to really give a fuck and say something, you really better mean it. Because it is a very awkward moment when you're having dinner with a turkey. And you're like, no, we're eating turkey for dinner. No, you're eating dinner with a turkey. It's a compromise of words. And it's really, really hard to take something back once it's been said to you, and you have to react, or from you, and you have to accept it. So I got my first really big ad agency job when I was fairly young with a big international firm. And it was one of the most difficult situations because I was so far down the ladder there was like a basement that I didn't realize existed, and the ladder went through the floor, and that's where I was. I was a VTR operator, which is an antiquated thing that I don't believe exists anymore, because why would you use videotape relay operators? So I worked in this machine room, doing archives and doing graphic assisting, and I was many, many years younger than everyone else that was there, and it was very, very difficult, and people were really, really mean. I would say 99% of the people were really mean. And when I say they were mean, I ate lunch alone so much that I found an R2-D2 that I could roll out into the middle of the lunchroom and sit with me, because it became comical how much everyone would leave without me to go to lunch. So I started working late and doing more and more and trying to kind of get people to like respect me and enjoy me, and was just like, this is my big break, this is the opportunity. And it really didn't get there. And I wanted to learn advertising. I wanted to understand how big campaigns get made and big ideas get through. So this was an important thing for me to have experienced, and I don't regret it in any way. And when I went to my boss and I was like, listen, like I'm working a bunch, I'm doing all these shitty jobs that nobody else wants to do, you know, what do I need to do to make people kind of like respect me or like include me a bit more? And they said, you know, you really should consider getting a haircut. Well, the thing is that my hair didn't really affect my job. I don't know how much you know about VTR work, but you don't use your hair. It's not a core part of it. So I was offended in a pretty incredible way. And at the same time, I had opened up a gallery, and I was showing all this visionary art and digital art and doing kind of symposiums and things like that in this space in Chicago. So I'm living these two different lives and so satisfied and so enriched in one, and just completely getting squashed in the other. And I said, you know what, I'm gonna keep this hair, and you can keep this fucking job, and go fuck yourself. Ooh. There we go. So while I had this gallery, I was lucky enough to host a really incredible, powerful show called the Yo Show. The Yo Show, Yo What Happened to Peace, traveled all around the world at a time when things were really, really dark globally, as dark as they are now, but you know, the beginning of this situation. And when this show came to town, it fulfilled this need that I had for creating a space for a community that I hadn't really experienced. And had I not quit the job that was so shit, I wouldn't have had the time to focus on bringing this show to town. And one of the best parts about it is that I met the curator of the show, John Carr, who became really a mentor to me. He had worked as a designer at Sony Music in New York and then left his job and was just like, fuck this. You know, I want to do poster art, I want to do screen printing, and I want to get more political and I want to be more active. And he moved all the way to the other side of the country to Los Angeles to start doing that. And when I met John, I met somebody who really understood ethics in a way that was eye to eye with me. I knew people who, they saw eye to eye to my design-wise, they liked work and what we were producing, but we didn't operate the same way from like a heart-mind business level. And John was really that person to me. And when you find those people, you need to keep those people. You have to check in with them and let them know that they're important, because people usually don't think that they're very important. If they do, they're probably like a dick. But like, if you don't tell them that and you don't really cultivate that relationship, you won't get it. And it was really important. And at the end of this show, I realized that if I wanted to make more art, I needed to leave the space so that I could really focus on my craft and making more of my own art, and how important that was. Which brings me to another lesson: don't be a dick. This is an important one, guys. Don't be a dick to anyone. That's the whole lesson. No, so I started writing this lesson, and I was like, you know, it really should be called Don't Be a Dick. And then I was thinking about it, and I was like, you know what, like, you can kind of be a dick. Like, a lot of the people I work with are dicks. And I don't know if you say that as much in Canada as we say it in the States, but like, oh, like, that guy's a dick. But like, really talented people can be pretty dickish, because they know that they're really, really talented. So then I was like, okay, well, I guess there's a difference between being a dick and what I'm really trying to say. So I kind of renamed it to Don't Be an Asshole, because an asshole is a lot like a dick, but then it shits on you. And that's the difference. So while I was freelancing and kind of working full-time and trying to make art, I did this project with a friend of mine who was a friend of mine at the time, who was a producer. And I'm not a person who says, like, don't work with your friends. Work with your friends. Work with your family. Work with your lover. Work with your brother. Work with them all. Because if they're actually good people, it's not a bad situation. Like, if they're an asshole, then they're just an asshole. That has nothing to do with your relationship with this person. That has to do with who they are. So I'm going to preface that before I tell this delightful story. It's a lot easier to tell this story now that it's like much further away, but like there was a long period of time that this was like a really traumatic, difficult thing. So I got hired by this friend who's a producer, and he hired me and another friend of ours. And the other friend was the editor. They were going to edit all this video shit, and then I was going to do these animations. And at the time, I had this full-time job. I was a video engineer, and I had to work, all day. And then I was going to do these animations at night for very little money, but they were going to be shown in downtown Chicago on the side of a building in this like really big experiential piece. And that was really where my career I wanted to go. And at the time, being able to get out of the TV and out into the world doing video was kind of where it was at. So I do these animations and I get it all done. And then the night before the event, I get this email from the producer that's like, hey, and it's like an email, but then there's like a thread underneath that's like 17 pages long, because that's a brilliant thing to do, is like forward a thread to another person. So it just says like, hey, really need to get like 5 more minutes of animation. The client is super upset. Can you do it tonight? Which basically meant like I had to sleep in my office because I didn't own a computer fast enough to do the animation that I needed to do, because this was a long time ago. And I was like, yeah, of course, like no problem. So I stay up all night, and I literally like turn the volume like all the way up on my computer, so when the renders are done, it goes bing, like really loud, and I like wake up to make sure that like nothing crashed. In the morning, like 8 a.m., I send this little like teeny tiny version of the video, because you couldn't actually send big videos and Vimeo didn't exist and all that kind of shit. So I sent him this little version, and I'm like, hey, it's done, here it is. And then I'm like, man, what the fuck did the rest of that email say? So I go back, and I read this thread, and the thread is between him and the client. And as I'm reading this thread, there's 3 realizations. Number 1, he knew the entire time that this client wanted nothing but animation for weeks. Number 2, he told the client that he was the animator personally and that he was doing this work. And 3, I know this client. This is a guy that I've worked with before and that I like and who's awesome and that I can like call on his phone, and I know him. So I get really upset, clearly. I see a little bit of red, decide that I'm going to give a fuck, and I call up this producer gent, and I'm just like, what the fuck, dude? Like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Like, why would you not tell me what the actual scope of this project was? Why would you take credit for my work? This is fucked up. You didn't do your job. You didn't know how to be a producer. You fucked up. And he said, you know what? Fuck you. I have this little video. I'm going to deliver what I have. I'm not going to pay you. You go fuck yourself. So I did one of those things where like you hang up the phone and then you like look at it. Have you guys done that move where like something gets said that's so fucked up that you just are like in slow motion or like, what? So I had that kind of moment. And then I did what you're supposed to do. You call someone who's much more sane than you. So I called John Carr because he was kind of my ethics mentor. And I asked him what to do. And with his Zen strategist brain, he's like, all right, let's look at our options here. Okay? So we've got doing nothing. Piece looks like shit. Shush. Rude. Do nothing. Piece looks like shit. You probably don't get paid. Or deliver the high-res file. Let the client know it's your work. Definitely not get paid. Definitely not going to have that friend. And I was like, yeah, that's definitely not a friend. So I like that one a little bit. And then he's like, or give the friend the high-res file. Maybe you're going to get paid, but they're never going to know it's your work. So I was like, well, that one sucks because now I've poured my heart into this. So I called the client and I said, listen, I've been doing this work. I want to give you the high-res file. Will you meet me at the event? I'm sorry that this got all jacked up. Not trying to put you in the middle. Don't really care if I get paid. And that's one of the really lucky things about living in both universes is that I have this day job so that when I have my artwork, when I have the things that are really important to me, I can fall on a sword and it doesn't affect my ability to operate and function as a human in society, to like buy food and pay rent and like get a sweet haircut and like things like that that are really important. So I delivered the piece. I've never spoken to that person again, who was the producer. I have continued to work with the gentleman who was the client, who's a really awesome force in the event industry in Chicago. And it's a fuck that I will have to keep forever. And it is something that maybe I could have handled more gracefully, but I don't really care at this point. So I've always had this like dual path day job. So I've worked with a number of really big brands in my daytime life. I mean, you can Google up most of that shit in my name and find stuff that I've done, won awards. Whoop. Don't you dare, clicker. Clicky click. I don't even know why I was like, let's hide the next slide of nothingness. So, you know, for me, this is how I live. And I don't think this is like the right way or the wrong way or, you know, what you should do or what anybody should do. This is my way. You know, I love my career. I love working for brands. I love being able to say, like, you know, I made bookersbourbon.com. I designed that and did the UX work, oversaw bringing on the developers, oversaw the development, oversaw the UAT. Like, you know, being able to do information systems is fun to me. Being able to do and solve business problems is great. But that doesn't change the fact that I love making my art. So I've always kind of had, should I point this at you up there? Should I point it down here? Up here? Down here, up here. Okay, up there. So I've always kind of had these two, of working in commercial work and then working in artwork. And for me, that's where I like to be. You know, I don't want to ever have to think about when I'm making artwork if somebody's going to want to have that in their house while they're like eating dinner, because a lot of the artwork that I make is kind of odd. I make art about things that I'm experiencing. So I've done a number of pieces about body hair, things where you know you come and shave different fleshy objects inside a gallery, things where people are being shaved, things where people are having their skin removed to find hair underneath it, any number of things that comes from a period of time in my life where I spent a long while with a man going through a sex change and was really like weirded out about his hypersensitivity about body hair because I'm a woman and like sometimes I just don't shave and like it doesn't make me any less of a woman. So it was this kind of odd issue, and for me it was important for me to be able to parse out these thoughts. And I make art to have conversations, and not just for me to have conversations with other people about the things that I'm thinking about and experiencing, but for people to have conversations with each other about maybe things that they haven't thought about or questioned, maybe things that they're uncomfortable about or insecure about and they don't want to bring up. What's really interesting is when this opened, kind of the piece here on the right is, these two are 2 of 3 pieces in a series called Shave. And we had it projected on the side of a building, and my mother came to the opening, and my mother had electrolysis in the 70s. So at this opening, my mother is talking about her like 1970s electrolysis and hairlessness with like all of these like genderqueer people, which like to me, that's the point. I don't need anyone to like buy this to make me satisfied. Seeing that happen and having those memories is what makes me satisfied. The little thing that you see on the left, so I fabricate and build my own monitors. Being a video artist and being an installation artist can be very daunting. So building objects to be able to show digital work is pretty satisfying. And my art is weird and it changes. You know, I don't really have like one thing that's like, oh, this is my thing. You know, I've VJ'd a number of electronic shows and have built works around Elvis Presley with unreleased film footage, cookie jars and sculpture exhibits, all kinds of weird things. And it's really what piques my interest, and I'm not really held back by any of the boundaries that I think conventional artists that pick a medium kind of have. And one thing that I really love is this quote from Sarah Silverman, stop telling girls they can be anything they want when they grow up, because it would have never occurred to them that they couldn't until you said that. When I first heard her say this, and it's a great joke, but it's painfully true. And I'm lucky enough that I did grow up in an environment where there weren't those limitations, where it wasn't like, oh, you have to do this. This is the way. This is how you are. This is what being a woman means. This is what being an artist means. This is what being an adult means, for better or worse. And now, as an adult and as a woman and as an artist and as a business owner and as a worker, I'll have to define all of those things for myself. So maybe it would have been easier if I was put into Catholic school and had all of that kind of regiment. But that also sounds horrible. So our last lesson, how are you guys doing? You guys feeling okay? You guys doing okay? Are you guys hungry? I've never done the pre-lunch. I could really fuck up your day. I could talk for a really long time. And then lunch would just become 1 o'clock, and then the next speaker would talk. And then they'd be like, what? And you'd all be eating while they're talking. So, have a plan with options and many roads. And, that's a really important thing because you never really know what's going to happen next. So 2014 was a pretty pivotal year for me. I had started my own business, and being a business owner is really, 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 really not fun unless you have an MBA and actually want to do business. But if you're a creative or a developer or a person who wants to actually do stuff, being a business owner kind of sucks because you have to do all this business stuff. So it was a really eye-opening experience for me, and I was lucky enough that one of the first projects that I did was build this conceptual gesture instrument for Vice and Ray-Ban, and was really lucky, did quite a number of really great projects when we first started Make Amazing. Identity work for Robert Gardner, where I got to spend time with him before he wound up passing away for his legacy website, and things that really meant a lot. And I never really grasped how big that jump was going to be until I just kind of made it and was like, why can't I? Here I go. And then while that happened, I then got inducted into the Hall of Fame at my college. This is the largest anyone's face should ever be. Ever. I didn't know that this happened. I didn't know my college had a Hall of Fame. And I got a letter that the president of the school wanted to talk to me. And I was on site with Robert Gardner in Boston at the time. And I took the call from Harvard Square, and I'm sitting out there. And I honestly thought that they were going to tell me that there was a problem with my degree. That from 13 years ago, that there was an issue. And they were going to be sorry, we just caught it, but we're taking it back. I'm so sorry, Miss Alpert. And it's weird, being in a Hall of Fame is a creepy thing that only dead baseball players or aging rock stars get. So it was equally weird because my dream is someone else's dream. So they induct you into this Hall of Fame, but it's the Inception Club because you're the thing that someone else's dream was to make, to see you succeed. So it's just been one of the most profound experiences and very, very humbling. And it brought to mind the idea of doing service. So I go back and I talk quite a bit at the college. And I had throughout the years, but not as much as I do now. And certainly this talk as well, of going out and doing service and creating a platform for people to really meet and to communicate. And when I got inducted, they were like, so, you've won a bunch of awards and stuff. What do you want to put inside the trophy case? And there's I went to Full Sail University, so there's 40 million Grammy Award winners or whatever that went there. So the whole Hall of Fame thing is Oscars and Grammys and all this stuff. And I was like, hey, you know what? Can you take my hair? Can I put one of my dreadlocks in there? Because that's really important to me, because you let me be who I was. So this is a photo of it. It's actually in there. But it kind of looks like a poop or like a worm. So I don't know. I'll leave it there for a while. Maybe I'll take it back out, put some other trophies and stuff in there. But they said, yeah. They were like, of course, we love you for you. We don't care what it looks like or smells like, Eat what you want, fuck what you want, make what you want. We'll be proud of you either way. So one of the things that happened to me shortly after that was that I got hit by a car. So living this big, full life and not letting any of these can'ts stop me, getting hit by a car is such a fucking shitty thing to happen. And, I went from being just absolutely in this unstoppable place to limping around. I had displaced one of the kind of low backbones, and I was T-boned by a guy. I don't know if any of you have been in a car accident, but time moves in a much different way when that happens. And all of this anxiety that I had felt before it, and all of these like weird trying to reconcile time moments that I had had, kind of shifted because time moved in this very different way in that very small window. And I wanted to hold on to that as much as I could. But at the same time, I had this business. So one of my clients at this business was an ad agency. And they were like, you know what, we'll keep you. We'll keep you full time. Just come on in here. And I was really lucky that I had them because I got to be who I was. And when I gave this talk the first time, this was the end of my talk. And I had taken this ad agency job. I had recovered from this car accident. And things were just swimming along nicely. And about 4 weeks after I gave this talk for the first time, I wound up, you motherfucker. Where is this slide? What? My big reveal, you guys. I wound up in the hospital. I kind of want to know where that other slide was. Oh, you know what, guys? I'm looking at a different presentation down here. That sucks. That sucks for you guys so much. I'm going to catch back up, though, and it's going to be really good. Let's go back to it, because we're going to reference this in a little bit. And I don't want it to not make sense. So I got to at least talk about it, because then you were like, what, that guy with the papers, what were those boxes? And then when I come to it the second time, you're going to be like, now there's even more boxes. Why didn't we get to see it the first time? I know, it's totally awkward for you. You've never seen this before, and I've been looking at this all day. So there were kind of these 4 pillars of me after I got hit by this car. I was an artist, I was a professional strategist. I oversaw North American digital strategy for a multicultural ad agency. I was a human, and I was a founder. And my humanism was a big part of realizing when I got hit by the car that I was really fucking delicate, that I was actually way more delicate than I was giving myself credit, that I had been kind of flying through life trying to just voraciously attack everything like I was covered in goddamn sandpaper. And I was actually this extremely delicate little bag of bones that is way more fragile than I knew. So as I was saying, after I gave this talk for the first time, I became very sick. And the kind of sickness that I had is one that is really delightful and unexplainable. There were 2 final diagnoses, neither of which they're sure about. I spent 15 nights in the hospital. I had 8 weeks of medical leave, 1 delicious colonoscopy. And if you add up all those numbers, it actually adds to 32, which is how old I was when this happened. So it's definitely some Illuminati shit that was going on. It's getting sick is a really, really humbling experience. And my immune system had attacked my intestines and had tried to kill me. So it was an inside job. And I'm still sick. And I don't really know what to do about it. And not like I want answers from you guys. It's just something that I live with. If you have answers, I want them. Like if you have the cure, give it to me. But being in chronic pain, and I wound up, after I went in for my initial issue with my immune system, I caught a deadly intestinal bacteria in my bleeding ulcers. So I was down for the count in a really hard way. And coming off of, starting to do this big talk and talking about breaking out these cans. And it kind of turned things inside out. And I knew that there was going to need to be a lot of change. I knew that I was going to have to take the lessons from the early part of this talk and this thing that I had built up for myself and really make a bigger impact moving forward. And I spent the time that I was on this medical leave working through a proposal for my first museum piece. So this is actually going into the National Music Center in Calgary, and it's a physics recreation of longitudinal sound waves that you play through a Connect. It'll be installed later this month. Working with a museum is one of the slowest, most difficult processes of all time. So being laid up on bed rest when this was going on was probably really advantageous to this happening. And I couldn't be more thrilled with finally having a piece that will be on permanent display. Because museum stuff, it comes and it goes. But knowing that people will be learning and being able to build something that's both aesthetically pleasant, functional, and open-ended. It's using like a MIDI bridge to play a VST instrument, so you're able to modify it and build off of it. This hopefully will be a framework that they use for quite a bit of time. And I was like, okay, well, maybe nothing can stop me. So I decided to learn about neuroplasticity. Has anybody heard of this? Cool. It's a pretty fucked up concept. So it's basically that you can rewire and remap your own brain consciously. So I found a woman who specialized in neuroplasticity, and I spent a long bit of time with her, and I was like, I can control this disease. I can control this pain. I can rewire all of this stuff, and I can just beat this can't and figure it all out. And one of the great things that I kind of took from that is this idea that when you fire neurons together, they will wire together. If you connect two things again and again and again, you'll bring yourself to a place where you will truly have made that connection. And the other little roads, the anxiety roads and the pain roads and all the other grief roads and nerve roads that you have, those roads will start to deteriorate and go away. And these new roads that you've built will start coming to be bigger and beefier highways, and you will have created them in your mind. So I did what any person recovering from a disease, trying to overcome everything and not take any of their medication would do. I changed jobs. So I got asked to basically take my dream job, which is what I have now. And certainly every dream comes with a little dose of nightmare. It's certainly not a cakewalk, but it's a hell of a lot of fun. Most of what I had been doing in advertising had been pitching these incredible, insane ideas, all of which would just die, or maybe we would do some watered-down version of it. And now every single day I'm in meetings about VR and AR and how to use transparent screens and giant installations and working with engineers. And it's incredibly fun, but it's also incredibly difficult. And all of a sudden, what was just these 4 kind of pillars became 8. And I've been speaking more and traveling more and building more and learning more and doing more. And I really didn't listen for the clarity of the calm. Because all of those boxes are important things about what makes me me, but there's a lot of boxes that aren't there, like being an awesome aunt, or being a good woman, being a good friend. And I was so aggressively trying to not have this cant about my career and being able to say, I'm not on this medication anymore, being able to say, I got that job, being able to say, I'm doing this art piece, being able to say, I'm doing this thing, I own this company, that I lost a really good part of balance. And that clarity now is why this talk is kind of coming to an end, because I don't really know what happens next. And that's a really nice place to be. To let things be rebuilding and not having control over them is an important part of that cycle, of that momentum. And with that, I like to always kind of end with this quote. How we spend our lives is how we spend our days. If you're not familiar with it, how we spend our days is, of course, how we spend our lives. What we do with this hour and that one, that's what we're doing. A scheduled defense from chaos and whim. It is a net for catching days. It is a scaffolding on which a worker can stand and labor with both hands at sections of time. A schedule is a mock-up of reason and order, willed, faked, and so brought into being. It is a peace and a haven set into the wreck of time. It is a lifeboat on which you find yourself decades later still living. Each day is the same, and so you remember this series afterward as a blurred and powerful pattern. So that's what I recommend making. Why can't you have that pattern? Why can't you have that piece? Thanks.
Hello.
Hi.
My name is Renato. I'm a designer and nerd. I wanted to thank you for coming here and sharing your thoughts with us. I think the thing that kind of stood out for me was the kind of the pain and suffering that you went through, but at the same time you maintained who you were, and you still pushed through and are developing and working on these amazing things. And I wanted to touch base just on one of them. If you could explain a little bit more about that. I looked at it as kind of like a physics space-time sound thing that you're working on. Because for me, I mean, I was like a nerdgasm. I was like, how does that work? And how, because you're talking about VR and all the stuff that's upcoming in our industry, and some of us here are having the privilege to work with that type of technology, building user interfaces and experiences for our customers. And you know, if you could just touch briefly a little bit about how, you know, how will that be pushing, and just how does this thing works? That'd be awesome.
Sure. Yeah. Yes. So the piece that I showed, it's called Bodyphonic. So it's built in Unity. It's using a particle system. It has a single pixel gradient from left to right, and then it uses a volume controller from top to bottom. It's playing across like 4 scales, and then your right hand is your dominant hand. So you hold to make a note, and then you release to release it. And then your left hand is like a fifth off of that note, so that you stay within a harmonic. And then you can see 2 pieces of sound reacting with each other. So the concept is to be able to showcase longitudinal sound waves. So most people think a sound wave, they think like this, and they don't think about the fact that it's actually a displacement of particles in 3D space. So the museum really wanted to build something to be able to teach that concept to children and still have it be interesting and fun for adults and people who are drunk. So this was kind of what we came up with to do that. So it's using the Unity sound bridge, the MIDI bridge, to be able to play a complete audio, like a Native Instruments box, which is a VST instrument that we just have that's in there, so that they're able to then have people that do residency or things like that. If they wanted to build an instrument, they'd be able to put that in there, and they could update it and do what they want from a sound perspective. Is that enough? Is that detail enough? So it'll be there. You should go see it. The National Music Center in Calgary is badass, to say the least. If you've never been to that museum, it's absolutely phenomenal. They have the largest collection of analog synthesizers in the world. They also are a playable museum, so they believe in everything being fully functional and for you to be able to come in and touch and play. And they have a brand new building that's opening up in a couple months that looks like some kind of insane spaceship landed in downtown Calgary, so you should check it out, because your government is awesome and gave them lots of money. Or Bell and the government, something like that. I don't really understand it, but I just know our museums like don't have any money, and it's sad. Any other questions? Do you want a banana? Anybody have anything? You, sir? Oh, so I've always said bananas are my spirit fruit. Like, I fucking love bananas. I've already had 2 today. Like, I eat them a lot. And when I got sick, they were like, you can only eat 3 things. You can have bananas, apples, and rice. And I was like, bananas? I love bananas. And they were like, yeah, I bet you fucking love bananas. Like, that's one of the only things you can eat. Like, yeah, no shit. Like, you're electrolyte deficient and you like could have Crohn's. Like, no shit, you love bananas. So it went from being like this very kind of odd thing that was just kind of part of my life forever. Like, you saw me in the hazmat suit eating my banana. I walked into a meeting, and that's actually someone else's Instagram of me. I walked into a meeting in that yellow suit with this banana, and I was like, what? What are we going to do? What are we going to do with this project? Because it just, I don't know, it made sense at the time. But yeah, I mean, that's what I'm into, you know? Like, I'm into synthesizers and bananas and cartoons and video games and I'm going to go into VR and never come back out at some point. Like, that's who I am.
Any more questions? Well, Ms. Alpert, as always, you enlighten us by sharing your vulnerabilities with us, and that is truly the bravest thing that you could do. So thank you for that. Appreciate it. Round of applause.